Hi everybody, welcome to OBS Obsessed. My name's John Lacey. Today on the show we're going to be talking all about OBS Studio sources. So sources are the building blocks of your OBS presentations, live streams, video recordings. So we want to explore them today. And we are going out live to all the various places. So if you are watching live, please let me know where you're watching from. I just want to double check something in the background, make sure that's working. Yes, it is. Okay, awesome. So let's just get stuck in right now. I must admit, I'm a little rusty when it comes to the old streaming thing, so please bear with me today. But let's head over to our portable version of OBS. I should say too that OBS Studio is free and open source software for Windows, Macs, and Linux. It helps you record video on your local computer, it helps you live stream, and it also helps you sort of change how you show up in any application on your computer that supports the use of a webcam. So that's some things it can do, and it is literally free, so that's really awesome as well. Today, these are the things we're going to be looking at: the video and audio input, display capture, window capture, images, color source, the image slideshow, media source, and VLC source, which is a variation on that theme, and of course text GDI+. So if you are watching live, let me know in the chat where you're watching from, but let's just get stuck in today. So I'm going to head over to my video capture scenes. So for the most part, I really only have one camera set up here on this computer, but I do have the Osmo Pocket 3, so I'm going to turn that on. And we're going to make sure that we're selected the webcam option. And interestingly enough, it kind of defaulted to the webcam, which is cool. All right, just going to make sure that this is pointing forward so it can actually see me. And I should say too, this probably isn't going to be the best angle, but I just wanted to use it as an example. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And I realize you can't see this yet, but I will show you in just a second. And I'm going to switch up over here, just adjust the framing a little bit. Okay, so if you have a webcam, if you have a digital camera that has some sort of direct input into your computer, maybe via USB, or you're using something like a video capture device like a cam link, for example, you can certainly add that into OBS, and that can be really useful. So if I go over to my sources, if I click on the add button, I can go to video capture device. And this is where we can add our camera. So it's a really good idea to get into the habit of actually giving things names. So I'm going to call this one Osmo Pocket 3. Again, this is just for your reference, so you know what your scenes and sources are called, and we'll click OK. Now we get to pick the device. So here you'll see that I've got a bunch of different things in here, including virtual cameras from other pieces of software. So I've got the Camlink 4K, I've got the Elgato virtual camera, I've got the Osmo Pocket 3, an NVIDIA broadcast virtual camera, and an OBS virtual camera. Let's go with the Osmo Pocket 3. And I click on that one, and immediately you can see what that camera is picking up. And again, it is in a slightly weird position. I probably wouldn't leave it where it currently is, but this was convenient. So I guess the first thing to note, if I move this to the side a little bit, is this is not filling my frame, and I kind of know that it should. So let's go through some of these options together. Down here it says resolution, frames per second type, and it says device default. And if you bring in your camera and it looks great, then by all means leave that. But in this case, I know I'm not getting the right resolution, so I'm going to go down to custom. And that actually made it disappear entirely. But if I go to the resolution now, I can select something from these drop-down lists. In this case, I'm just going to roll with 1920 by 1080. That should be sufficient for my purposes. And you'll see that it's actually filled in this section here. We can adjust other settings if that is desirable. So video format, color space, color range, buffering, you can flip it vertically. So if I'm hanging my camera from my teleprompter, which I have done in the past, I can certainly flip it if I need to. Apply rotation data from camera, if any. Again, this will only apply to certain cameras. And use hardware decoding when available. So that's really all you probably need to do to actually get your camera up and running. The other thing that is worthwhile considering at this point is how do we want to capture audio? because some cameras will support audio and some won't. And generally speaking, I don't know that it's always a good idea to capture the camera audio, because inbuilt microphones on cameras generally aren't close enough to capture the audio well. But especially for something like the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, it sort of comes with, well, certainly in the Creator Combo, it comes with a microphone. So it could be that you've actually applied this microphone, you've turned it on, and you want to speak to this microphone and bring in the audio that way. And for a lot of cameras, this would actually come in automatically. For the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, we do need to sort of specify that here. So we can say down here in the audio output option, it says capture audio only, capture desktop audio, capture just our output desktop audio. But just underneath that, we have use custom audio device. And this is where the magic will happen. And again, if you're kind of in a podcasting situation where you want to bring in a different mic and have these things together, you certainly can do that here. So if I go to use custom audio device, I can actually bring it in from the Osmo Pocket 3. And again, if you're using a wireless microphone, if you've got some boom microphone, some video microphone attached to that one, you can certainly do that over there. I could bring in other things too. So if I bring in my microphone Broadcaster Pro Stereo, that would bring in the audio that you're listening to on the stream. And I'm just going to click OK just to show you what this looks like, because once you've added the audio, you'll see that it's over here. We do have our audio mixer options. So we can go to the properties, and that'll bring up those settings again. We can also go to advanced audio properties. And again, I'll touch on these really briefly for today. We've got things like the volume. So if you need to increase or decrease that, you can do that over there. You can also, by default here, it seems to be in decibels. If you prefer working in percentages, you can just check on that, that toggle, that checkbox there. We can make it mono or stereo. We can adjust the balance. So if you wanted to pan hard left or hard right, again, you'd have to think about what the use case for that is. Sync offset. So maybe if there is some sort of delay between the video and the audio, you can attempt to adjust it over here. And we do also have our monitoring options. So monitor off means the stream or the video recording will hear it and you won't. Monitor only means only you'll hear it, the stream and recording won't. Or monitor and output is the best of both worlds. So both you and the stream will hear it. Again, depending on what your microphone is, that may or may not be a good idea. And we've also got different tracks. So if you're recording multi-track audio, you can do that. But by default, I generally recommend we just leave these alone, unless you know exactly what you're doing. But if I go back to the properties of the Osmo Pocket 3, if I did want to use the built-in audio from that, and that could be either literally the audio built into the camera, or it could be sort of the wireless mic if you're choosing to use that. I just need to make sure that I select input, capture input terminal Osmo Pocket 3. And I haven't tested this, but let's actually just turn this on. And a little blue light will do its thing. And I'm hoping it will connect automatically, but maybe it won't. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, there we go. It just connected. And it told me that the battery level is 100%. And again, I'm sure you can see here that this audio is spiking because I've got it really loud. And again, I could just come in here and adjust those settings. So maybe I need to bring that down a few decibels. Say -4 dB, for example. And then I could sort of bring this, you know, I'd probably have it attached to me rather than holding it. Although we do have wonderful things for this as well. So I guess all I wanted to do was just point out that that you can use this particular camera as a webcam. But again, this basic process applies for any kind of camera. So I'm going to turn this off now, and I'm going to conserve my my power for this one, because I hope I'm going to actually be doing a bit of recording over the weekends. But let's just jump back over here. And let's check in with the comments. So, hey Jerry. Jerry writes, hey John, I hope you're well. Yes, I am pretty well here on a Saturday morning here in Australia. Great to have your company. So today on the show, we're just going through the different OBS Studio sources, and most of them, the ones that I think are most useful. So we're not going to get into all of them, but I think we're going to get into the ones that I personally think are really, really useful. So let's go back to the screen capture and just give you an overview of where we're headed. We just had a quick look at video and audio input. We're going to look at display capture, window capture, working with images, color sources, image slideshow, media source and VLL source, and text GDI+. So for our next thing, we need to think about display capture. So the thing about this one, and I'm going to have to open something in the background really quickly just so that I've got it as an example. I'm going to actually start up some keyboard software called Analog Lab 5, and I'm actually just going to throw it onto a different screen. I've actually got 4 different screens here. I'm going to put this on the field monitor, which is, you'll see in a second, is generally just a place I keep a clock so I know how I'm going for time. But if we want to capture an entire display or entire monitor, we can do this with display capture. So if I go down to my sources, I click add a new source, and we want to go to display capture. Again, you might want to give this a particular name. I'll call this one field monitor because I know that's the screen I'll be capturing. And we've got the capture method. If you have problems with one of these, you can explore the other ones, but generally I just leave this on automatic and move on with my life. But this is the point at which we have our different displays. And again, I've got 2 monitors that are the same brand and the same size, and it doesn't really, except for the primary monitor bit, which is a Windows setting, it doesn't really differentiate between these, but I can sort of select which one I want to use. But in this case, I'm just going to use my teleprompter. You will note that it's actually not 1920 by 1080. It's a little bit smaller, which is fine for my purposes today. So I'm going to select that. And now you're going to actually see what's on that screen. And again, it's just that audio app. And I don't actually have the keyboard turned on, but that's not particularly important for my purposes today. The other option that we have here is capture cursor. So if and I'm just going to move this over to the side a little bit, but if I have that turned on, you'll see when I move the cursor around that app, you'll see where it is. And again, that's really good for software demonstrations, especially when you want people to know where you're moving to and where you're clicking, so you can turn that on and off. But the great thing about this is once we've got this here, we can make that larger. You can actually hold down the Alt key and crop in. So maybe if I just wanted the, I say that, but that didn't work. Let me try that again. Alt. There we go. Hold down the Alt key, make sure you get the right key on your keyboard, and you can sort of drag that in. So if you're like, especially if you've got one of those super widescreen monitors and you want to share just one little part of it, this is a good approach to do that. And I can drag in. And hello to Frozen Fusion. Thank you for being here. Today we're checking out all the different OBS sources. Well, not all of them, I should say, just the ones that I find super helpful. So again, this is just a display capture. Again, I'm capturing the entire window, but I could potentially crop in and reduce that. But again, if I right click on this and I go to transform and I go to reset transform, that'll take us back to what we had originally. So the big thing here is just to keep in mind that display capture captures the entire screen. And again, you can sort of crop that if you do want to only reveal a part of that, and especially if you do have a super widescreen monitor, one of those really long curvy things, and you want to capture a little bit, then cropping is a good approach to do that. I'm just going to turn that off. Let's move over to window capture. So window capture is really if you just want to capture a particular application or window. So in this case, I'm going to do the same sort of thing that I just did with our Analog Lab app. So I'm going to go and add a new source, but instead of display capture, I'm going to get window capture. And we'll call this one Analog Lab 5. Here we actually specify which window we want to capture. So again, you'll see all the weird stuff I've got running in the background here, but that's fine. So what we really want is just this analog lab 5. And you'll see now, we're just getting the window. So if you just want to restrict it to just that particular application, that's a really good way of doing it. Again, we've got the capture method. Unless you're having problems with automatic, I wouldn't even worry about that. We do also have window match priority. So if the title changes of your application, you can say it must match exactly, must match the title, otherwise find a window of the same type, match title, otherwise find window of same executable. And again, one thing that may happen is that if you set this up and you do your live stream or your recording, and then maybe a week later you want to do something similar, you might need to actually go back in here and just reselect that window from the settings just to make sure that's showing up properly. It's not a big deal. It doesn't take very much time to do. The other pretty magical thing about this, capturing a window rather than an entire desktop, is that we have this capture audio beta option. So if you want to capture audio from a piece of software, this is a really good way of doing it. And again, you won't be able to hear this on the stream, but if you look at the audio mixer on my screen, if I press some of these, you'll see that it's playing sound. It is way too loud. It's spiking the red something awful. So again, if that is something that you're coming up across, we can just go to the audio mixer. We can go into the audio properties. Probably bring this down maybe 60 dB and see what that looks like. Still probably a little loud. We might even go -8 dB. And again, if you prefer working in percentage, you can sort of toggle that as well. But now if I go and press those keys on that app, then that's good to go. So that's potentially really quite useful. Again, just keep in mind that this particular app, it's not filling my screen even on my smaller field monitor. I can increase the size of that if I want. One thing you do need to be a little bit careful of, and I'm not sure if I can do that with this particular app, but let's have a go. See, if I minimize that window, it's disappeared from the screen capture. So you don't necessarily need to have the window as the thing on top of all the other apps. So if you do have limited screens, it doesn't necessarily need to have focus, but it can't be minimized. The moment it's minimized, it ceases to exist. But again, you know, maybe you're doing a presentation with a single scene, and you have everything built in there, and you don't want that to show until you are ready for it. Maybe you keep it minimized, and then when you click on it, when you bring it back up, it's good to go. The other thing about this too, and this is on such a tiny little screen that I'm probably going to struggle to see this a little bit, but this particular app actually has different zoom options. But this is a really good call out, because this particular app, again, I'll hover my my mouse over on OBS. This has a little menu. If I click on this menu, it doesn't actually capture via window display capture. So if I wanted to show you those settings, I can't really do that here. This is a case where I probably would need to get display capture the whole screen, and then potentially crop it in. But the thing I wanted to show you, and it's so difficult to show you here, so I might even just move this to another screen. And again, another benefit of window capture is I've moved this to a different screen, and OBS isn't going to freak out because it's watching the window, the application, rather than a particular screen. But now, if I actually, this actually has some zoom options. So I can go resize window, and I can make this a little bit larger. And you'll see that when I change the size of this window, it'll actually change the size of this in OBS as well. And that's, you know, you can resize most windows. This isn't particularly unique to this software, but again, just keep that in mind that it will automatically adjust that. And you may need to think about the framing a little bit. But that is really handy that you do actually have that. And again, you can see what happens when I minimize that. It just disappears entirely, which again, might be something you want to play with. It might be something you'd like to explore. But I do love that it captures the audio really easily. And you've got that there to go. So you've got those two options in terms of capturing windows or displays if you are capturing. In fact, what I might do, just to make this point, I feel like I'm belaboring this point a little bit, but I think it's probably worthwhile doing. So I'm gonna resize this window again. We'll make it, I don't know, much smaller, and I'm gonna put it back onto my field monitor because that's what we were using previously. So that was window capture, but if I go back to display capture, I'm going to turn this back on. Now if I actually select that menu, you can see it. And that's the thing, depending on how the app is built, other dialog boxes may be considered the same window, the same application, or they might be a little bit different. So again, it's worthwhile actually testing this out in the wild so you know which version you need to use. And again, I might just make that a little bit larger and do it again, just so you can see it really obviously. So I'm going to go through these ones pretty quickly today. I hope this is useful. This is OBS Obsessed, and today I'm sort of sharing with you different OBS sources and how you might want to think about using those. So let's head over to images now. So images, again, exactly what it sounds like. It's just an image source. You can bring in any type of image you like. I can go and add a new source, go to image. Again, give this a meaningful name. I don't really have a meaningful name because I haven't even decided which image I'm using, so I'm just going to call it banner. And then we can actually say, we can browse for that. And again, I'm just going to find something random on my computer to bring into OBS just to show you what this does and how it works. So in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab the comment bar, which is just a gradient. So you've got your image there. Again, perhaps not the most exciting thing in the world, but again, incredibly useful. The other thing that's worth pointing out here too is if you're using PNG images or GIF images with transparency built into them, that transparency will be preserved. So you can still see this images text, even though this image is a full screen image. It's just that it's actually got a transparent section at the top. So again, if you want to build things in layers, that's really easy to do. And I'm going to just jump out here because this is built in a number of different images. So I have sort of an image on the outside, which is that black border. I've got sort of the gradient border. I've got the OBS Obsessed logo at the top there. These are all different images and they all have the transparency built into them. So sort of I built it as one single file in Affinity Designer 2. And then I just exported those images. And again, just make sure you preserve that transparency. But if we go back to here, another use case, which is kind of nifty, is, and I hope my memory is correct on this one, because I really am making this up as I go along. But essentially, we can use GIFs, and we can potentially use animated GIFs. So I'm just going to see if I can find something really quickly in the back end of my computer. Okay, so I've got an animated GIF of myself just holding a hand stabilizer for my DJI Osmo Pocket 3. I'm sort of just moving it around to show you the springing action. And again, that just plays over and over again. So we've got that there. That can be our image. But, you know, we can do all kinds of cool stuff here. One thing I will say is if you do work with SVGs, so scalable vector graphics, and these are graphics that are built on mathematical equations and data, and the great thing about those is that they are scalable, so you can make them as large as or as small as you like without pixelating. You can't bring these in natively, but there is an SVG plugin on the OBS Studio plugin directory, so definitely check that one out. Again, not the most exciting thing in the world, but incredibly useful. So, I guess the thing that I'm kind of taking for granted here a little bit is just that you know that you can toggle these things on and off as you need them. And you can actually go in and set up keyboard shortcuts for that if you want to. So if we go to the file menu and we go to settings and we go to our hotkeys and I search for banner because that's what I've called that, we have keyboard shortcuts. So I can click in here and I can go Control Shift 1, Control Shift 1 to hide or show. And again, if I use the same one, it should toggle. I guess we'll find out in a second. But if I go 1, I can toggle it on. I can toggle it off as well. And of course, if you have a Stream Deck, you can set up buttons to do this as well, which is really, really useful. Okay, so it's funny. I've still got my Analog Lab 5 blocking my time display, so I don't know how we're going for time. Actually, we're doing pretty well. I'm not going to drag this out. I'm going to get through this as quickly as we can. So, because I just think it's really useful to revisit the basics sometimes. So let's go to the color source. The color source is exactly what it sounds like. We can add a color. And again, we go to add a new source. We go to color source with the American spelling of color. I could give this a name. Again, in this case, I don't know what color I'm going to use, so I'll just let it default to color source 3. We can actually adjust the color. We can click on select color. We can choose some of these basic colors. We can pick something from this this color section here. We can make it sort of lighter or darker with this slider over here. We can even save our own custom colors. And this is probably a really good thing to do. And I haven't ever used this. And I'm thinking I should start using this because there are particular colors I use in my branding all the time. But we do also have the values. And again, if you come from any kind of graphic design or web design world, you'll probably recognize some of these things. We've got hue, saturation, and value. We've got red, green, blue, and the alpha channel as well. And you've also got the HTML hex color. So if you know a particular color, I don't know, I might just make something up here. 030FEE, which is apparently a shade of blue. I was completely making that up as I went along, but it is what it is. And again, we can adjust these. So again, probably not the most exciting thing in the world, but incredibly useful. So I'm going to pick that color. I'm going to go OK. One thing that is good to know, and I kind of alluded to it really quickly, if we go back to our select color options, we do have the alpha channel. So alpha is for transparency or opacity, so how see-through something is. At 255, it's completely solid. If we went down to 0, it would be completely transparent. So let's pick a number somewhere in between. I'm going to go 75 and go OK. And now you can actually see some of the sources that are underneath it. So in this case, it's just the text that says color source. So if you do want to work in layers, if you do want to give something a bit of a tinge, you can do that there as well. The other great thing about this is it defaulted to 1920 by 1080 to fill the whole screen. But if you just want a banner at the bottom, for example, we could adjust the height of this. We could go, okay, we don't want this to be 1080 pixels. We want this to be, I don't know, 300 pixels. And go okay. And then we'll probably just drag this at the bottom of the screen. And maybe this is the point at which you'd be combining some of those other images to make a banner. So it could be that we have an image, we have some text, which we'll get to in a second. But those are some really, really cool things that we can do. And again, if you do, I'm going to copy this for a second. I'm going to paste it as a duplicate. And I'm going to paste it again as a duplicate. And you'll see that transparency. So if you put these things on top of each other, you will get different colors again. So I don't know, maybe I'm just really easily amused, but I do enjoy the fact that we can work with transparency. I think it's a really great way of building up a scene. All right, let's turn our attention to our image slideshow. In my opinion, there are 3 ways that you probably want to use this as a background of assorted images, slowly changing over time, as a PowerPoint slideshow that you can sort of go through when you want to, and sort of thirdly, as a bit of a promo banner, just to have things randomly flash up onto the screen. So if I go down to my my sources and go to add a new source, I'll go to image slideshow. Let's start with the PowerPoint. That's kind of the one that everybody knows and loves. although a lot of you are probably using Keynote instead of PowerPoint. And what we can do now is essentially, these are images, so we do need to make sure we save our presentations in image formats. I'm going to go and find some files, and again, you have the option to add individual image files or an entire folder or directory. I'm going to go and see if I can find one of my stock standard things that I want to incorporate here. Again, I wish I had more time during the week to actually build up some examples for this, but that's fine. We'll just roll with what we've got. Let's go over, and I'm just looking at some stuff on the back of my computer. I think that might be it. I guess we'll find out in a second. I'm just selecting the entire folder. Okay, cool. And hello to Uncle Andy. Great to have your company today. We're just going through different OBS Studio sources that we can use to build out presentations and live streams. And right now we're just exploring the image slideshow options. So again, you can add individual files, or in this case, I've added an entire image, an entire folder of images. These can actually, and we have the different image slideshow modes. So here you can see it's on automatic, and it's just sort of going between those images, and we can adjust the transition and the speed. But for this one, I really just want to treat this like a PowerPoint. I'd talk to it, I'd flick to the next one. So instead of automatic, let's go to manual. And now if I go okay, you'll see that we've got this. If you are in OBS, you can actually just go to the next, you can talk and go to the next slide, talk and go to the next slide. We can also go to our keyboard shortcuts and go to the file menu and go to settings, find hotkeys. And again, I'm just searching for PowerPoint because that, actually in this case, probably what I want to do is look up next and previous. So here we go, we've got PowerPoint, next slide. I could go maybe my right cursor and now look up previous, and I'll do my, I said cursor, what I meant is the right arrow and the left arrow. All right, so now I can talk to my things and I can hit one of those arrow keys and I can talk about it and I can go back. And like, again, not the most exciting use case in the world, but incredibly useful. And you can also set up buttons on your Stream Deck if you've got one of those to do that as well. So let's just imagine that maybe instead of having this, you know, as a PowerPoint that we're speaking to directly, maybe this is just something we want in the background. And it could either be a literal background, especially if you're doing some green screen chroma key type stuff or background removal with AI tools. And instead of going manual, we can go to automatic. And this is where it'll just flick through these different things. And again, it could be just, you know, some landscapes in the background that we're working with. It could just be a little bit of visual interest if you're using the virtual camera. But we've got a few different options here. And what I might do actually, I'm gonna remove that folder. And I'm going to add some other files. And again, I'm just going to do this on a different screen that you can't see. Just go, I can find some things in the background. I'm pretty sure I've got a folder just called nature, which will have some nature photos in it. All right, I'm just going to grab a few random things in here. Again, doesn't really matter too much what they are. And I'm going to open those. All right. So we've got these in the background. Again, you know, we can adjust how this is. So we can adjust the transition. So we can have a cut, which will just go from one to the next. We've got the fade, which will slowly move between those two things, a little bit more slowly, but we can adjust those settings. We can swipe. And again, that sort of moves from one to the other. And we've also got slide, which is a similar idea. I know there is a slight difference between those two things, but for me, they look very similar. But often what I want to do, especially if it's for a background and I don't want to distract people too much, I will have this as fade, but I'll also make the time between slides a little bit longer. And again, these are in milliseconds. And I'll sort of adjust the transition speed a little bit. So maybe I'll make that 1,000. And you can just have that in the background. I should say too that this obviously isn't filling the background, so if I did want to sort of maybe crop this in a little bit. I could do that, and I could potentially make that a little bit larger to fill the frame. Again, it just depends on what you're working with. And here, like I haven't made this as slow as I probably normally would, just because this is just a demo, and it would take forever for you to see that. But again, especially if you want something subtle, think about pushing those time between slides and transition times as well. So that's really, really nifty. Again, I'm gonna just remove some of these things. And I might even just right click on this and reset my transform. So we go right click on it, go to transform, reset transform, and this will go back to the standard size. Another use case I think would be really useful for this is that you can sort of, maybe you have different banners, maybe you have different calls to action, maybe you have even just little graphics that are like, follow us on Instagram, here's the URL, or here's the you know, the username that you need to look up, whatever that could be. And I mentioned earlier that the image source gives you the ability to incorporate transparency. You can also just make transparent GIFs that are completely transparent and have those as sort of in-between options here. So if you wanted to, if you've got, you know, maybe a follow us on Instagram, and then you can put in another image that is just completely blank, so there's nothing on the screen, and you can just have this in a corner doing its thing in the background. So I don't really have one of those built out to show you, but conceptually that is certainly something you can think about. And you know, I say that I'm really curious because a million years ago I did do a presentation, I did do a video on that, so I may have something in the background, but I don't know how quickly I could find it, so maybe let's not dwell on that for today. But yes, I think that's something a lot of people don't think about, is that you can use those transparent things in really clever ways. So this is OBS Obsessed. I'm John Lacey, and today I'm talking to you about how we can actually bring in some different sources from OBS and how we can use some of those things as well, which can be really quite useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this wherever you happen to be watching. I'm just going to change something really quickly because it's glitching on me, which is incredibly annoying. All right, and I'm going to go back to here. I'm back in studio mode. So this is the magical button I was trying to press earlier, which is like and subscribe, and what do you know, it's still not working. That's really annoying. I'm going to have to figure that out. It's got me stumped. Okay. Never mind. All right, so let's continue with our OBS Studio sources. Let's go back to OBS. So we looked at our video and audio capture. One thing, actually, I did forget to mention this during the video and audio capture segment. If you do want to capture your audio separately to your video, you can go down to the Add an Audio Source and go to Add Audio Input Capture. So if I just wanted my broadcaster as just the audio, all I need to do is come in here, select that device, click OK. Again, you'll see that the audio mixer is there in my scene. If I need to adjust anything in here, I can do that in the advanced audio properties, and we can go from there. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, so I just wanted to mention it really quickly. All right, let's get back into the order of things. So our image slideshow, our media source, and our VLC source. So our media source is literally what it sounds like. It'll play media. We can bring in videos, we can bring in audio from different things. So if we just want to play something, we can do that. We've got a local file or a option. So again, if I want to find something on my computer, I can do that. And I'm going to just quickly grab something over here. I'm going to browse for my file, and I'm going to grab that. We've got the ability to loop this. We can say restart playback when the source becomes active. We can use hardware decoding if available, show nothing when the playback ends, close the file when it's inactive. So we've got those things. Loop might be a good thing, depending on what you're working with. And I can go OK. And you can see this video is playing in the background. And again, if I toggle the visibility off of that one, and again, just make sure that we have this restart when the source becomes active, I can untoggle that to start playing it. But the other thing too, I'm going to untoggle the source just to play it for a little bit. I'm going to wait till we switch to a different part of this video. And I just want to show you that if you have this on, so now I'm in a different part of the video. If I go to a different scene, and again, we could do that with keyboard shortcuts. We could do that with a Stream Deck button. But if I have that option turned on and go back to it, it will start that from the beginning of the video, which is quite a useful thing to do. Again, it's worthwhile checking out our audio options here. This does seem like it's probably a little bit too loud, so I'd probably go into my advanced audio options. I think minus 6 dB is probably the region I want it to be in. But the other thing about this is if you want to listen to this playback, you've got to think about your audio monitoring options as well. So at the moment, monitor off means that the video recording or the stream would hear this and I wouldn't. But if I want best of both worlds, I can click on that. And when I do, I can hear the music that's playing underneath this particular video. So we've got that there. And again, you can choose what you need to hear and what you want to hear. And again, if you're familiar with this video, maybe this is a really good prompt, because maybe once this is finished, you want to switch to a different scene, and you can do that really easily. All right. And again, if you have that loop option on, it will just keep going forever, potentially. So keep that in mind. So that's the media source. The VLC source is very similar in a lot of ways. You do need to install the VLC media player on your computer, and when you do that, you'll actually get an additional source. So this is the VLC video source. And the one thing that this gives you that the media source doesn't give you is the ability to create lists of playlists, essentially, of different sources. So I can, and again, in the same way that we could do this for the image slideshow, I can add individual files, or I can add an entire folder or directory. I'm going to go and add my files. I'm going to add 2 files to this. And again, we've got the loop playlist option if we want to do that. Maybe we just want to play it once and move on. We have the visibility behavior. So stop when visible, restart, then visible. Stop when not visible and then restart when it is, which I think is a good way of doing it. Pause when not visible, unpause when visible. And always play even when not visible. So I'd probably leave this on this stop when not visible. I think that's a good place to be. But if you did have a really long recording that you're playing through, or a long playlist, and maybe you want to actually just pause it at different places, we could potentially do that as well. So maybe you're actually, doing a bit of a reaction video and you want to pause it in places and talk to different things before moving on. So I'm going to leave that on that pause when not visible option, and we'll have a look at that in a second. So we also have audio tracks. So again, if you've got multiple audio tracks in those videos, if you've got a video format that supports different audio tracks, you can certainly do that. Subtitles enable is interesting. I'm not really sure. You'd actually, again, you'd have to have a video that had those embedded, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So if I click on that, you'll see that my video starts to play. And just before we move on to another part of this, I'm going to hit the visibility. In this case, it's actually going to pause that, and I bring it back, and it's going to continue from that point. Whereas if I selected the first one, it would start at the beginning, I would hide this, I would bring it back, and it would start from the beginning again. So again, it just depends on what your use case is. But the wonderful thing about this is if you do have a lot of pre-recorded material, if you do know that you're going to have to stop your stream at some point and actually move on to other things, or, maybe you need a bathroom break, or you need to grab some coffee because you're streaming for 8 hours at a time, you can have some videos that are ready to go and you can play that. And then when you come back, you can just switch to your normal scene of you talking or whatever you happen to be doing. So that's another variation on a theme, and that's really great. But again, I'm going to toggle that off. Finally, and we're making amazing time on all of this. I'm surprised. We have GDI plus text. So first of all, I need to acknowledge this is the point at which OBS can be a little bit different if you're using Mac or Linux. GDI plus is a Windows specific variation on text. And that's not to say you can't use text on Mac and Linux. It just has a fewer features. So we literally already have some text on the screen. So in this case, you could just roll with that. You know, we could do that. But again, I'm gonna delete this and we're gonna start from scratch. So we can go down to add a new source. We want to find text GDI plus, and we want to give this a meaningful name. So we can say, I'm just going to call it demo text. Again, if you're building a real presentation or real stream, you'd have a better sense of what this could be. We can just type in our text. So we can say demo text. I can go up to the font options and go select font. And this will give us a whole bunch of different options. So if I want a specific font, I could maybe pick Open Sans. I could make it bold. I could sort of adjust the size of this. We could have strikeout or underline effects. Again, probably a little dated. I probably wouldn't worry about those. We can click OK. I must have made that massive. Or actually tiny. So the other way around. Let me try that again. So I'm going to go, let's say a size of 80. I think that's in points. Yep. Okay, cool. So let's actually make that a lot bigger. Let's go 140. So we've got that there. We've got text transform options. So we can make this all uppercase if we wanted to. We could make it all lowercase. And again, this is without retyping the text. We could have start case, so capitalizing the first letter of each of those words. But in this case, I'm not going to worry about that too much. We do also have the ability to read text from a file. So you can click on that and then you can go and specify a text file that you want to use. Again, I'm not really sure I have a great example for this, but let me just find a random text file really quickly. Episodes. And I probably need to make this a lot smaller because there's a lot of text in this file, and I'm going to click OK. Interestingly, I'm not really seeing that text here. Maybe because it is a multi-line file. Maybe that isn't a great example. But if you had any kind of chatbot that is changing variables in text files, this might be a useful thing. I don't think this is particularly useful for me right now. So I'm going to turn that off and we'll just go back to our demo text. And again, I just want to make that a lot larger because otherwise we won't see it at all. So we've got that there. We can make this vertical if we wanted to. And again, you could actually just probably adjust that with the transform options that are available for most visual sources as well. We can change the color. And again, we have all those color options that we had before. If you want to save a custom color, you can do that there as well. And we can go OK, and we'll make that orange. We're going to change the opacity. So again, 100% is completely opaque. 0 is completely transparent, and somewhere in between is probably what you want to play with. We do have background options, and again, we even have a gradient option too. So if you want to explore that, you can. Background option. I don't know that I really want to play with that too much, but yeah. So I guess this is the point at which, if I change this to something a little bit more obvious, maybe this white color, you'll see that the block has a background color now. And it actually always has a background color by default, but by default, this background opacity is reduced to 0, so you don't see that. So I'm going to actually turn off the vertical because I think that's going to be a little bit confusing. We can adjust the alignment from left to center to right. Again, in this case, probably more useful something that has several lines of text. So here is the second line. You'll see that it's actually increasing that if I have more text, and we can adjust the alignment, so whether it's center, bottom, or top. And again, that's within the frame itself, which is not terribly useful in this example, but it's an option. And we can go from there. And we can even do an outline if we want to do that as well. So maybe I make my outline orange. Maybe I will go to my color and I'll make the color, the fill color, transparent. And then I've just got the outline. That could be a fun thing to do as well. So again, not the most exciting thing in the world, but incredibly useful. And in some ways, the point at which this becomes useful is when you start taking all these different sources and combining them in interesting ways. So it could be, especially if you've got sort of, you know, you're removing the background, you're doing some chroma key, maybe you want to actually put yourself on top of the video capture in the way that I'm literally doing as part of this stream. Maybe you want to do something like that for a reaction video. Maybe you want to pause the reaction video and talk about it. You have all these different building blocks. And they're all default, with the exception of this VLC video source player. You do kind of need to install the VLC media player, which is free and available, I think, on Windows, Mac, and Linux as well. So it's just really great. And again, I think I'm going to just grab another file just to give you a sense of this, because not only do you have the ability to play videos in this, but you have the ability to do other kinds of media as well. I'm just going to grab an audio podcast, which is an MP3 player, an MP3 file. And again, if I didn't mention this earlier, but if you want to change the order of these things, just click on it and use these up and down arrows. And now if I click this on, you won't see anything visually, but you can see that the VLC media player is moving. So this can be used for background music. It can be used to play podcasts, whatever you want to do. Just make sure that you own the copyrights or you've licensed it. Don't be using other people's material without their permission. That's a no-no. But those essentially are the bulk of our OBS Studio sources. I should say there are other ones in here that I don't use very often, or I've never used. I've never used audio output capture. I don't really know what that is, or when I would actually have a use case for it. But again, maybe you do. Browser source is something I use sometimes. It's a really good way of bringing up comments. So if I bring up the comments on my main stream and I click on one of these, John's chat support says, hey, remember to like and subscribe. That's a browser source, and that's actually powered by Ninja Chat. So that's a free overlay that I'm using to capture my chat. What other things do we have in here that we might want to mention? Gradient is a plugin. So again, it's like the color source, but instead of just solid color, you can do a gradient with it. Game capture. Again, I know it's a super common use for OBS is to capture your gameplay, but I'm not a gamer, so I hardly ever touch that. Scenes are a good way of bringing in other scenes into an existing scene, and I have covered that on previous shows. Source clone is a plugin. It's a useful plugin, but definitely worth checking out. So we've got those. We've got the ability to group different sources together, and we've also got some deprecated ones, so the text free type too. Again, I don't think I've ever used that, but it is there in the archives if you want to play with it. So I hope that's been useful. You know, it's been a little while since I've done one of these streams. If you've got any questions about OBS generally or about the sources in particular, let me know in the chat, in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for your company today. I hope you have a great week and a great weekend when you get there, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.